We are so excited. Have you ever noticed for Mother's Day or for Father's Day, the only gift that we actually want is to not be a mom or a dad for a day? Isn't that true? Like, that's like the greatest gift you can give to a mother on Mother's Day is like, don't worry about anything. You don't have to be a mother today, you know? And it's kind of an ironic thing, but we are so thankful that we get to celebrate it here. And as Danielle mentioned, we know this day comes with a lot of different emotions, and really, that's kind of a short-sighted statement. Let's be honest. Every day comes with lots of emotions. Every holiday, every season comes with individual nuances and circumstances that some may be happy about, others may be sad, some may be joyful, others may be grieving. And so it is just a constant reminder that every one of us are walking through a lot of different things on any given day. And the ability to come alongside somebody to let them know that they're seen and they're loved and they're cared for, no matter what they're feeling, no matter where they're at, is such a joy and a gift that we get to give to each person in our life. And so we want to honor you today as a mom, as a woman, a biological mom, an adoptive mom, whatever it may be, a mom in waiting. We know that there's a lot of emotions that come with these days. And so we just want you to know that you are seen, not just today, but every day. And we just pray that you feel blessed and you feel honored today. I was thinking about this not too long ago, but if you had to pick a word to describe kind of your season of life, maybe your season of life in context of the culture that we live in today, or you looked at the world around you and you looked at your life in the midst of that world, and you had to choose one word to describe that season for you, what would that word be? Right, think about it. Try to keep it church appropriate if possible. What would your word be? Right? If you had to sit and sum a lot of these things, what would that word be? I've been thinking about this for a while, and I kind of landed on what feels like the most honest word for me would be this word, complex. Life feels complex to me right now. I don't know if it's just been in this season. I feel like it's a long time, but doesn't it feel like there's so many layers and nuances to everything? Like anything that you thought once was simple now just seems more complex, which is crazy because with all the information, all the technology that we have available, wouldn't you think that life would feel way more simple than it actually does? Well, that's kind of the reason why we're kind of starting a series here at Heritage Church that we're calling Real Simple, as Danielle mentioned. It's kind of just basing it around this idea of simplicity. Because here's the thing, for all the nuances that your life has, for all the nuances that my life has, that there's not one single situation, it feels like there's all these moving pieces in life. For all of those nuances, here's the one universal thing that is true for every single one of us. It's this: everyone builds their life upon something or someone. Everyone. We all build our life upon something or someone. This is a simple reality, but it has a profound impact on our life and in our life in the next. And so let me just kind of say it this way. This is kind of the big idea that we've built these next couple of weeks of conversation around, and it's this: the foundation that we build our lives upon determines the stability and the destination of our souls. The foundation that we build our lives upon determines the stability and the destination of our souls. A number of years ago, I heard someone share a strategy for life. And honestly, the strategy seemed so simple, I kind of just dismissed it for a little bit because I started to think, surely life has to be more complex than this. And in that moment, what I almost missed, if I had dismissed this strategy, here's what I would have missed. I missed how simplicity is often God's design for navigating the complex. Simplicity is often God's design for navigating the complex. But here's the problem. Psychologists have done years and years of research and study and case studies with individuals just like you and just like me. And you know what they've discovered? That the average person has a tendency towards what they call the complexity bias. The complexity bias is this: that you, when given an opportunity to solve a problem, you will most likely choose the more complex solution than the simple solution. And here's why they discovered. Because when your life feels a little out of control and someone offers you a simple solution, you go, no, my life is way too complex for that. That's too simple. That's not going to work for me. You're telling me if I eat less and work out more, it might work? No, that's too simple. You don't understand. You don't understand what's going on in this temple of mine, right? We all have this complexity, but we will choose complex things over simple. And here's what I'm starting to discover. Simplicity is God's design to navigating the complex. And if you're anything like me, if your life feels complex, if the culture you're navigating feels complex, the answer is not more control. It's simplicity. It's simplifying some really important things in your life that you can organize around that matters most. And I almost missed this strategy a while ago, where I began to think, no, the way, it's too simple. But here's the strategy. Here's the formula. And this is one of these things where I have adopted into my life, and it has made a world of difference. It's really simple. It's called GFO. God, family, others. God, family, others. And in that order. That's what's most important. See, most of our lives have these three components in them on some level, don't they? Right? But it's the order in which you put them, prioritize them, and protect them that makes all the difference. Some of us, we go, my family is a huge priority. In fact, for many of us, we make choices so that our family is the top priority. In some cases, it's before God, it's before other things, it's family, we put that in that order. Or maybe for us, it's others. My job, my hobbies, that tends to come even before my family sometimes. You see, it's this order that matters the most. That we put God at the very top, then our family, and then others. When you begin to implement that simple strategy, right? It's not easy, but it is simple. This foundation brings stability in your life and helps determine the direction and the destination of our soul. Right? It's not complex. It's simple, just not easy. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus gives this sermon, and he gives this lens through which people can kind of look at their life. He says, here's a foundation that you can build your life upon. And here's the thing, when Jesus taught in the scriptures, it wasn't a very complex sermon. And my guess is in Matthew chapter 7, when Jesus shares this sermon, it wasn't really one that blew everyone else away. My guess is that after Jesus was done, he probably received a few comment cards. People saying, it's not as deep as I really would have liked, Jesus. You know, I think you could have gone a little bit further in. It just seemed a little simple. We're going to go to another rabbi who really takes the Torah seriously. Right? And this is my guess that Jesus was kind of going through it. And my guess is Jesus heard that quite a bit throughout his life and throughout his ministry. Jesus' teaching was actually very, very simple. He used stories. He did stories so that people could put things in the right categories, could visualize them in the right ways, and he would help them to understand what truth he was talking to them, and he would unpack it as he was going. This is what Jesus does in Matthew chapter 7. He gives this sermon, and at the end of his sermon, he tells this story. It's a very, very simple story, but this story was designed to kind of run parallel to each other, where you would see the things that are the same, and then you would notice when it got different. And it would be an application to what Jesus was saying. And so here's what he teaches. He does this sermon, he ends his message this way. He says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. Now, this isn't a complicated story, right? So real quickly, a couple obvious observations. Here's the first one that Jesus is saying. Everyone builds a house. Right? And what Jesus would do is he would use this idea of a house as kind of a metaphor for life. So what Jesus is saying is everyone builds a life. Whether you wanted to or not, a part of living is building a life, right? That's the same in both stories. The second thing, he says every house will face a storm, right? Everyone builds a life. Every house is going to face a storm. In other words, what Jesus is saying is, here's the reality for all of us. Life is going to get complicated. It's going to get hard. It's going to feel difficult. They're going to have some moments where it feels like the storms come, the rains fall, the wind blows. You're going to feel overwhelmed. And Jesus is saying, this is true for all of us. Every single person, no matter what, storms are a part of life. The only difference here in this story is what you build your life upon. That's it. It's not a very complex sermon. It's actually pretty simple, just not always easy. See, organizing your life around God, then family, and then others, I'm telling you, it is not complex. It's actually pretty simple. It's just not always easy. But it is the difference maker in your life. And here's what you begin to understand. For the last 20 years of my life, I have used this simple strategy to organize my life around. God, you're first. You're above all things. You don't come secondary to my schedule. You don't come secondary to my kids. I don't let my kids determine the direction of my faith. I'm not going to let my job trump my family. I put this in the right order. God, family, others. And this simple tool has helped me organize my life around what matters most. But ultimately, it has become the greatest strategy to help me protect what matters most. And if you're feeling a little out of sorts, you feel like life feels a little beyond your control, maybe even a little complicated, a little rush, I just want to encourage you to embrace some simplicity. And maybe the best thing you could do is reevaluate the foundation that you're building your life upon. Say, God, from here on out, I want to choose to put these things in the right order. And we want to do something kind of special today. I figured one of the best gifts that I could give you today is not speak very long. And so I invited some other amazing women who are part of our church to come and to share how they are living out this strategy and what that looks like. And they were willing to come on Mother's Day and share some of how they've gotten this right, even some ways that maybe they've missed it in others, but they are trying to organize their life around what matters most. So will you do me a favor? Would you put your hands together and just welcome some of these ladies as they come today to speak for us? Ladies, thank you for coming and spending your Mother's Day with us. Hi. Hey, it's good to... What's your name? For all of you visitors, that's my wife, not creepy moment. Hey, if we can we do this? I would love for you to just quickly introduce yourself, and being that it's Mother's Day, maybe even share real briefly your favorite Mother's Day memory. Does that sound good? So we'll start with Aim. If you can kind of go just straight down the couch. Name and quickly your favorite Mother's Day memory.
Awesome. I'm Amy, like Skylar just said. I'm a wife to the pastor. Hashtag so blessed. We have 3 kids, a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an almost 8-year-old. A special part about our family is also we are an adoptive family and a special needs family. We adopted our youngest daughter at birth, and when she was 4, she was diagnosed with autism. So we have a great full life, and I'm super excited. I also get to work here at Heritage and be a part of our special needs program. God came full circle, so that's super great. A favorite memory, I'm going to start with maybe the least favorite super fast. Is my first year of motherhood. You know the photo booths that are always at churches, or like you get a picture with your family? My first year of motherhood was actually a really hard year. I felt unusually sad and super lost, but I hid it to a lot of people. And I remember my very first year, I had a fake smile in that picture. So 14 years later, God had worked me through that whole motherhood journey. And now when I take a picture with my kids, I remember how faithful God is. And I love our photo booth moments. So I know that's kind of a 14-year mark, but I do love taking pictures with my kids. It's one of my favorite things, so I can look back at that moment.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, name and quickly favorite Mother's Day memory.
Hi, my name is J2 Nelson. I'm married to Tony Nelson, and we have an 8-year-old son. His name is Tony as well. My favorite memory of Mother's Day, probably my first year of Mother's Day. I'm very big on Mother's Day. I usually send out cards to my mom in Africa and family member overseas. But on my first year of Mother's Day, all my sisters and my mom called me and then wished me Happy Mother's Day, sent me card and flowers. So that was a great memories for me.
That's awesome. Thanks, J2. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kim Vanderplug. I'm married to Mark, and we have 5 kids, 1 daughter-in-law, and 1 grandbaby. And the age range is 30 down to the twins who are 21. My happiest memory, I should say, is every year my mom and dad would give us all season passes to Great America. And that was our gift. And so Mother's Day was always the first day we would go to Great America as a family. And what I loved was the age range of my kids. It was something that everybody loved to do, and it was just our happy place, and we were doing it together. So that's probably my favorite.
Kim, you have 5 kids. Can you tell everyone just who do you love the most of your 5 kids?
I do have a favorite, and I can share that because they're not here right now. They're coming to the next service.
Okay. Well, we better find out now. So, thank you guys for taking a few minutes. I think a lot of times if you're asked to step up or to speak or to share, they've said that it is the number one fear that most people have is speaking in front of other people. And so it is no small feat for you guys to take today and be willing to come up and share. And not only just share about like stuff, but to be vulnerable a little bit and to kind of put it out there for everybody to learn from. And the reason that we asked you guys was because you've done so well at modeling ways to get it right. And you've been able to translate ways that you've missed it in an honoring way that helps a lot of people. So just, we'll start with you, Kim, if we can. Tell me a little bit of why you were willing to even just be here on a Mother's Day and share some of your stories and be vulnerable.
Well, first of all, I'm very honored, so thank you. I think the one thing I wanted to share was we get a lot right as moms, but we get a lot wrong, and that's okay. That's why we need God's grace. But we have been surrounded by a team of people who help raise our kids with us, and I just want to encourage people to lean in to the people that God has surrounded you with to help you with that.
That's awesome. G2, how about you?
Well, I decided to speak today because I felt like maybe I needed to share my story a little bit. To give you a little background about me, I was born in Ivory Coast, which is in West Africa, and I grew up in a Muslim family. And so it was not an easy journey when I told my family that I was now a Christian. You know, I grew up closer with my mom, and my mom worked hard to allow me to come here in America, which was not an easy journey. So me telling her that I decided that I wanted to be a Christian was not an easy journey for her as well, because she worried about what people's going to think about her, that she didn't do a good job as a mother. And it took her a while, right, to forgive me. But it also took me a while because at the time I did not understand why she couldn't accept that I made a decision as an adult. So through that journey of being patient, there is that one verse that always stay with me, that verse about love, right? I think it's 1 Corinthians 13, 4:7, where it talked about love being patient, right? And, love endure everything. So I was patient with my mom. It took us a little bit, probably close to a year before we both spoke to each other. But in the end, when I look back, it made us closer, right? Because now I feel like I'm free. right? I can literally live my life as a Christian without being ashamed or uncomfortable because all my family know about it, but at the same time knowing that God was able to move my mom and my mom to accept me as a Christian today.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Amy, how about you?
I think the word vulnerable, sometimes it scares some people and some people lean into it, but I think it's something we can all grow in. The way I learned how to be vulnerable was sitting at my counselor's room on a couch just like this. So I love that we're on this couch because it reminds me of a vulnerable place. But being vulnerable is leaning into someone, even as J2 is sharing, leaning in a little bit, hearing something special from someone else, and saying the words, "Tell me more." And then at the same time, hoping that as you're sharing it, that person will also share more with you. So I think vulnerability happens one interaction at a time, one safe person or a trusted friend at a time. So I think we're sitting here today because we've had vulnerable moments together individually, and we're authentic with many and vulnerable with a few. And I think today you are our few. So we're here for you guys too, all the moms in the room.
Well, around this whole idea of God, family, others, when we were kind of kicking around this option and trying to think through how neat it would be to have just different perspectives and things like that, people who do this really well, other learnings that they've made through it, each of you guys came to mind. And so J2, I'd love knowing a little bit of your story, and obviously now that we've gotten some backstory, prioritizing God above everything else in your context meant putting everything on the line.
Yes.
And that is an element of putting Jesus first that most of us, especially Christians in the West, have no clue about. We kind of treat God as an add-on. We kind of look at it as faith as something we do if we're not busy on a Sunday. But you had to put it out there and be like, this is it. I may lose it all the things that I care. Help walk us through, how did you and what have you learned when it comes to prioritizing God above all things?
I live my daily life. I mean, it hasn't been easy here in America, right? Being an immigrant, going to school. I grew up speaking French, so I had to learn English. And, my husband and I had to go through a lot of bumpy road. But, knowing that God was always close to me, equipping me with what I need for me to overcome any challenge that come in my life, was enough, right? I have that daily devotional that a girlfriend gave to me 2 years ago. I always carry it. So it's kind of like a daily read based on the calendar. So if I'm having a hard time, like say today, I'll go to that day and then read what God's word is for that day. But one moment that comes in my mind is that most of my family live in France. So I remember going there about 4 years ago, and like I said, most of my family are Muslim, and we were sitting at my older sister's house, and if you know the Muslim, they pray several times throughout the day. So it was the nighttime, and they were all getting ready to pray, and everybody got up. Then I have that conflict inside of me. What do I do? We have uncles and aunts and everyone there. Mind you, only my immediate family knew about me changing my religion to Christian. But I didn't want to make my sister uncomfortable. But I knew that it was important for everyone to understand that I'm not going to fake it anymore, right? I was no longer a Muslim, and Christianity is what I had accepted in my life. And that if I really believe in what I read in the Bibles and all that God was going to help me through it. So I sat there and let everyone go through the prayers. And I knew there was a lot of questions. People was wondering, what is the matter with you? Is this what America has done to you? But I was just sitting there. And then when the prayer ended, one of my aunts approached me and said, why didn't you join us? And then I sat her there and I told her, I said, no, I'm no longer Muslim. Jesus is who I believe, and Christianity is the path that I want to follow. It was hard, but today my entire extended family knows about my dedication to the Lord.
Wow, that's amazing. So, Kim, let me ask you. So, we've known each other for a long, long time. Your kids we were in our youth ministry. You've got 5 kids. You're growing as a family. But what I think Aim and I have loved about you and Mark and your kids for so long is you guys have raised your kids in a way where they love you and they love Jesus. And probably what's more amazing than that is they actually love each other as siblings. Like that, you have great kids. And I know it's not easy. I mean, what we look at the finished product is nothing the day-to-day for families. But if we're talking about this idea that everyone builds a house, right? And every decision that you make is going to affect you. It's going to affect your children. It's going to affect that. And on top of that, you have a significant career. You just finished your doctorate. I mean, you're a big deal. So like, share a little bit. How have you been able to prioritize being a spouse, being a parent, and being able to lean in and not sacrifice everything else along the way to where your kids end up going, yeah, we would raise up and call her blessed. Like that is what we love about it, you know. What is that for you? Like how have you built your life prioritizing and protecting that?
I think, obviously Christ is our foundation. That's our center at the core. But I think one thing that we were pretty intentional about early on is that we didn't want to just fill the house with kids and all coexist, but really establishing some core values. And I'm not going to say anything that is earth-shattering. But it's every day making sure that everyone treats each other respectfully. And it's not, oh, that's just what siblings do, or that's just how siblings talk to each other. That wasn't tolerated. And so it's truly loving each other, making each other a priority, not just in your heart, but also in your actions. And really supporting one another, taking interest in their interests, and not just Mark and I doing that for our kids, but our kids doing that for each other, not being each other's critic, but being each other's cheerleader. And I think the world has enough critics, and so you need your family to be your cheerleaders and your supporters, and recognizing that we've got a lot of differences among us. With 7 people living in the same house, we're very different people, but tolerating those differences and extending grace when needed. And I say it now as, yes, these were our core values, but living those every day, and it wasn't easy, and we didn't always get it right. I always didn't get it right. I remember one time, and he's not here, so I won't embarrass him, but my son Adam, Mark and I were having a discussion, and I don't know that I was living out that core value of respect. And Adam respectfully came to me after, and he said, Mom, I know you and Dad didn't see that the same way, but I don't think you were very respectful or kind when you were telling him. And I thought, wow.
Shut up, Adam.
Yeah. What do you know, right? Yeah. But it convicted me, and they're always watching you, and and so just living those out, and I think the ultimate goal is that you want to create a family and a home that when they leave the home, they want to come back to the home,
that's good. Right.
And they want to be with each other.
That's awesome. I love that. I thought you were going to say they had a really great youth pastor that kind of anchored them.
They did.
Something to add for second service. We for years we've been able to be at graduations and parties and see kids and married their kids, and there is something to be said. I think for a lot of you that have raised children, you're looking back, and we've said a lot that the days go slow, but the years go fast, kind of a deal. And the challenge is figuring out how do we not miss the moment, whatever moment we're in. How do we not miss it? And you guys have modeled that so well at priority, especially with careers and trying to keep your family at the center of what that means. And I think just knowing you guys is you kept those things in order. Like God was the center of your life, and then your family was the next priority. Even to things like your job or your career, you were allowing those things to protect your kids in the process and not at the expense. And I just honor you for that. I think it's amazing. So. Aim, the last one we talk about is others, and obviously Amy is my wife, and so it's going to feel like, oh, he has to say this. It's Mother's Day, but my wife has a gift of seeing people that I rarely see in anyone else. She sees people in ways that I don't see them and others see them. And that's not always easy, and it's not always 100 or 1,000%. But when I started to think of somebody who lives with others in mind, I think there's different ways. You can use that others category as anything after God and family is others. But there's another part of that there's a secret sauce to life that when you live your life with others in mind, and it's not always just about you, there's a different level of fulfillment that happens in life. And Amy, you do that so well. And so I would just want to ask you, when we talk about this idea of organizing around what matters most and how you see others, how can people grow in that gift? I think just for me, all I care about is myself. I see myself and I want to do, I have to work hard at trying to think about other people. And it just seems like you start there. And so just share a little bit of how you've grown or how we could grow when it comes to seeing those things. So.
Thank you. I'm going to say the perfect church answer, which is Jesus, of course. But if you remember when I was growing up in Sunday school, I remember that song Zacchaeus was, a wee little man was he. He climbed up in a sycamore tree, the Lord he wanted to see. The Lord walked by and said, Zacchaeus, come down from there. I'm going to your house today. That song, for whatever reason, has always stuck with me. And then every Bible story I've ever heard, Jesus noticed people. He noticed the woman at the well. He noticed when a woman just touched like the bottom of his cloak, he's walking by, he noticed it. He noticed the thief on the cross next to him as he is dying. He noticed somebody next to him. And so I think that God has taught me, but just in general, if you're following the example of Jesus, he's a noticer. So I think that's probably one of my favorite things to help show my kids and create in our family is just notice. But to be a noticer, that also means you're not thinking about all the things that happened in your past and your shame and your guilt. You're not thinking with anxiety and fear of the future. You're actually living in today. And so our schedule, we have slowed down a lot so that you can notice, which is awesome. But I love being a noticer of people. But then the huge disclaimer, I think, for every woman in the room is because you are a noticer or a giver of your family, specifically moms, friends, sisters, aunts, grandmas, if you're a woman in this room, you have this innate, natural giving ability to other people. And it's so amazing, and that's how I grew up, is do it, do it, do it, do it. And then one day, a couple of years ago, I remembered that maybe I could also notice myself. And sometimes I think that as moms, we forget to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. How many are leaning in right now with me? Okay, good. You're feeling it too. So that tell me more is, I wonder how you could let God, when you leave today, you could let God tell you something about yourself. Because God notices you. He sees you so clearly. He created you. He knows you so well. He understands everything that even our husbands or our best friends don't understand. So I've begun to start to let God tell me things I don't know about myself already. So, Amy, notice yourself. Why are you reacting that way or overreacting that way? How are you responding? Why did that comment hurt your feelings? How do you need more rest in this area? So I think just the real simple thought is, how can I take care of myself and notice what's going on in me so that I can also take care of other people? I used to think that meant like I needed a spa day or like a vacation or like a huge overnight away from everyone. But Skylar and I just talked about this last week, that I was like, babe, I think I had this like light bulb moment, is that I can take care of people in front of me every day, and I can also take care of myself at the same time. I thought it was like an either or, and Skylar's always in our house saying, don't think the extreme black and white, come to the both and. And so the both and for me as a mom, and the lesson that I've learned so many times the hard way, I think, is how can I notice what God is doing in me to take care of myself and throughout the day, and also who's right in front of me.
I think one of the things I love about this, even just the simple strategy, and the reason it's it's nothing profound, right? But most of us feel like our lives get out of whack, and we're constantly needing to recalibrate. The question is, what are you recalibrating to? If you don't know what you're recalibrating to, then you're constantly going to be out of whack. And so sometimes we feel like our family just consumes us. And let's be honest, there are seasons, especially if you have children, young children, that is your whole world. Your entire life revolves around them, your schedules, your social calendars, who you even hang out with. Like we went through those seasons where you're going, I don't even want to hang out with those people because they don't raise their kids the same way we do, and they're causing us more headache. Like it just, your whole life changes around it, right? And for a season, that is survival. It is just not the way God designed you to live in perpetuity, right? And so sometimes others, we have to put ourselves in a position to go, how do I help notice others or meet needs or take care of some things that are beyond, what I want to do, right? But sometimes when that just becomes the only filter that we make decisions through, everything gets out of whack. What I love about what we're talking about is organizing your life around what matters most. When you do this God's way and you calibrate to Him first, everything else that you need falls into its proper place. It is really hard to serve your family well if you're empty spiritually. Right? It's really hard to serve others or notice others well if you're empty spiritually. So the order in which you organize your life around matters a lot. And that's kind of a really simple process. Here's the last question I'll give. In fact, not if you want to answer, you can, or just do it real quick. If you could share just one bit of wisdom that you feel like has helped make a difference in your life for anyone that's listening today, in just a brief couple sentences, what would that be? Now, you all don't have to answer, but if anyone does want to, I want to give you a chance to share your wisdom.
I can jump in and say that when my kids were very little and we were in the thick of it, I had an idea in my mind of, in order to prioritize God, I had to read my Bible every day. There were certain things that I had to check off in order for me to feel like I've done that. And then I kept falling short because, oh my gosh, another day went by and I didn't read my Bible. And I'm not saying that that's not important, but you can find other ways. So for me, playing my worship music, that's how I love to center myself. And so it's constantly going in our house. And then talking to God, but it's not these fancy formulated prayers of, oh, Heavenly Father, that's good too. But sometimes it's just, God, I don't know what I'm doing and I need you to. And so I would talk to him like a friend, and I'd talk to him all the time. And so anyhow, I think giving yourself some grace and just knowing that you can prioritize God that might look a little bit differently than you've done it in the past.
That's really good. Haven't you noticed that grace is what draws us closer to Jesus? Mm-hmm. Right? So if I want to be in proximity with God, if I know I want to grow spiritually and I just miss it, that sense of failure, that sense of judgment makes me just want to hide from God. When I allow God's grace to fill me, it just draws me even closer. So now I want to go back, or I don't want to sit and go walk in shame anymore, but that grace draws me to wanting to spend time with God in a different way. So that's so good. Thank you.
Don't know if I have much wisdom, but
we'll be the judge of that. Yeah.
But I know as a new mom, it was a struggle between my husband and I determining how we're going to raise my son, right? So if my son were to do anything that is wrong, and if my husband yell at him, I will get upset, and right there in front of my son. So I have to learn that it take two, right, to raise our son, and how I need to moderate the way that I speak to him in front of my son. Through the years, he's 8 years old now, I have learned to let my husband, talk to my son however way he want to talk to. But if I feel like he's out of line, I will usually call my husband on the side and say, maybe you could have approached it this kind of way. Maybe if you talk to him this kind of way, maybe it's not going to be very negative toward you. So at the same time, if my son were to run to me and say, hey, Daddy did this, and I say, yeah, that's what it's supposed to do. Although I may disagree with the way Daddy approached it, but I learned to not make Daddy look negative in front of my son. But, if I have an objection to my husband, I learn to call him on the side and talk to him.
That's great. I love that.
I'm going to start doing that too. On the side, that makes sense. So I'll say really quickly, something I've learned is that it's okay to change For your family, we're supposed to change as moms. I thought with one child I was supposed to do it this way, or actually this is the way I am, this is the kind of mom I am, this is who I want to be. And then the next child, I was like, oh, I got to change a little bit. And then our third child, I had to change a lot more with her autism. So I think it's awesome to change. We're supposed to. Caterpillars go into butterflies. Seasons change. It is okay to change for your family to what your family needs.
That's awesome. Guys, thank you for taking a little bit of time, sharing your heart. Yeah, can you honor them today? That's awesome. Thank you. Love it. Here's just kind of the question that we'll kind of close our time with today. What foundation are you building your life upon? I know it's a complex question, but it's actually pretty simple, just not always easy. And so having something that we calibrate to is what matters. And starting with Jesus and what it looks like to prioritize Jesus in our heart, Jesus in our family, Jesus in the way that we see other people makes all the difference. And what you will find in those moments is when you miss it and you mess it up, you don't find judgment, you find grace. And you find a God who says, I've been there, I know what you're feeling. You have Jesus who mediates on your behalf before God, and you find what you need in his presence. Here's why foundations are so important. Because what you're building doesn't just impact you. It will impact your children and your children's children and your children's children's children. So I just want to encourage you, build on the right foundation. Build on the rock that is Jesus. Build in the priority. God, you are my number one. You are my first. Everything else goes. That means I may say no to some things so that I can prioritize being in God's house. I may say no to some things so that I can prioritize putting God first in my family. I may say yes to some things. I may say no to some things. Whatever it may be, God, you are my first. And as we do that, God begins to give us what we need for the other areas that matter most in our life. And so today, as we conclude our service today, we wanted to sing a blessing over you, a blessing over your family, a blessing over your generations to come. Some of us are just beginning to build families. Others, we're looking back on the legacy that we're going to leave. And there is nothing that will make a difference more in this world than a legacy that is built upon faith, a life for others to grow in and to build from. And so as we sing this today, I just invite you just to close your eyes, listen to these words, and allow them to speak to your heart today.